Are you a chiropractor with a struggling practice, having a hard time finding and keeping patients? Is your staff falling short of expectations? I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and DC Trainings has the answers that you need. So tune in now and find out how. Hello, everybody. Welcome to DC Trainings. It is a thrilling Thursday to talk about DC Trainings, and we are wrapping up Module 3, which is the Report of Findings module. So I'm happy to be with you, and I'm looking forward to sharing the sequence of what we've covered over the last module. And the reason why I say that is because today is the final week in Module 3 being the Report of Findings module, week 8 being the Reactivating New Patient Report of Findings, which in the case of a reactivating new patient, you're basically doing a summary of the entire report of findings process, but you're sort of shortening it, or you're making it a little more concise, because this particular new patient is somebody who's come to see you before, and then for whatever reason, they left the office, stopped care, and then came back and returned as a new patient. So we're doing a report of findings for someone who has actually heard the report of findings before, and they're hearing it for the subsequent time. It could be the second time, it could be the 20th time. We all have patients that sort of come and go, and it could be any number of times. But we want to encapsulate it in a way, and I should frame this because we want to encapsulate this topic or this appointment in a way that the patient doesn't feel like this is a cookie cutter approach. They don't feel like you just say the same thing regardless to everybody, which we don't. And we want them to feel like it's fresh, like it's a new segment of time, even though you may be explaining some of the same things that you explained at the last report of findings, right? So we want to keep it fresh, we want to keep it concise, and we want to, for some patients who have returned to see us on more than one occasion, we want to keep it concise in a way that sort of streamlines the process. So from that aspect, today is an important topic. And at the same time, it's a nice review of everything that we've covered in this module. So I want to jump right in and cover this for you. So let me share my screen. And as always, if you have any questions during our webinar today, please raise your hand, type in your question. Let's make sure that nobody leaves this webinar with any unanswered questions. That's going to be important. So let me just open up a couple of things here, and there we go. Okay, so as you can see on the screen, we've gone through this whole sequence, right? This is 8 weeks of sequential information. I want to jump to the next screen because I want to emphasize something, and that is at the bottom there where it says the next seminar. That's our financial arrangements seminar, and that's next weekend. Not this weekend, sorry, but next weekend. As you can see on the screen, it's July 15th. That's Saturday. That's a live seminar in my office where we'll cover all the details from A to Z in terms of financial arrangements as they relate to the report of findings that we are completing now. So we'll get into the whole financial arrangements aspect in that seminar and cover those in detail. But I can just say quickly that if you don't do a good job on the report of findings and you don't build value for the care plan or the recommendations that you have, people aren't going to be really wanting to pay for that anyways. So there's no point in getting to financial arrangements unless you have a concrete body of information that you've presented with a clear-cut pathway and a clear-cut recommendation to get the patient from point A to point B, with point B being that they're subluxation free or their subluxations are stabilized, right? And they have optimum health potential. So we can't get into financial arrangements until the stuff that we're wrapping up today is fully concrete and solid and in place. I've had report of findings before where I came up short and I didn't really explain the components, which this will be a little bit of a review from the module that we're in right now. But I have a brand new CA, and I'm leading up to a big compliment for her. But I have a brand new CA, and there's 3 major points in the report of findings that you have to nail it on, or else when you get to financial arrangements, it's not going to be very successful. So what are those 3 sort of high points as we go through the report of findings? 1 is the push off, 2 is the demand for care, and 3 is the clear 100, the 100% commitment. Those 3 steps must be addressed, or at least explained, those 3 points, before financial arrangements, or things tend to unravel. And so that's why I want to get into a review of this report of findings sequence as it relates to those areas and leading up to the seminar on the 15th. But please come out and join us. You're going to be here in my office. You'll see where I work every day, where I actually do that which I teach. I like to walk my talk. So that's where we operate every day. And yesterday, I said I was leading up to a compliment. Yesterday, I had a meeting with my new CA, Anna, who's doing a fantastic job. She just started doing her own reports of findings last week. And already, and I think she's maybe done 4 or 5 report of findings, but already, I got to blow up my screen for this because this is really exciting. Already in that short time, she's had 2 prepays, and all but one of the report of findings has started. Now, if you look at a span of 5 reports of findings, she's well above 80%, and 2 of them were prepays. So she's doing a great job. And I actually feel like the one that didn't start is going to be back anyway. So we're still going to be able to kind of recapture that. They just had some things they had to work out with their schedule. But what I want to really compliment her on, obviously, is her commitment to the chiropractic philosophy and the chiropractic lifestyle, and sharing that message and that idea and concept with our new patients in a way that they really get it and they sign up for care. And now they're going to be receiving the care that they need, not just in the short term for pain relief, but in the long term for maximum health benefit or maximum health potential. So I was just really excited to share that with you today, because I know many of you have CAs that are doing reports of findings, and you know how the transition goes, right? We start with a crawl, then we walk, and then we run, and Anna's definitely running. Okay, so let's get into our topic today and cover this report of findings sequence. And this is a picture of me going through a report of findings with a patient, and it's a reactivating patient. So you can see I could have transposed this picture over from a brand new patient having their very first report of findings. There's not a lot of difference because we're still going through the same educational process. But I'm going to give you some tricks or some tips, some tricks to make it more efficient. And I also want to add to this because, as it says, ongoing marketing means that many former patients will return for care. So in my office, and I know in some of yours as well, reactivating new patients are a daily occurrence, right? There's just always patients coming back in and starting care again. So we have to keep in mind that this is going to be a continuous process in our practice. And the better we can streamline this process and make it efficient, that'll obviously help with your practice so you can grow your practice. But on the perspective of a patient, if they view how your office receives them when they come back in as a way of being efficient, friendly, professional, and affordable, if that whole process is presented in an efficient way, then they're going to be much more likely to return. Conversely, and I've helped some practices who were struggling with this to overcome it. Conversely, if a patient comes in as a new patient and they start receiving chiropractic care and then they leave for a while and then they come back, and when they come back, they have to go through this extensive, laborious process of becoming a patient again, then what are the chances going to be down the road when they do stop care and then they want to come back again? What are the chances going to be that they choose your office? Well, if they remember it as being a laborious process, then they're going to go somewhere else. So we do want to have that sort of open door policy where patients can come back in and see us, and it's easy and it's streamlined. And that way they will come back and see us as often as possible. And maybe someday they'll get the big idea and they'll continue continuously the way that we would want them to. Okay, so lots of former patients are coming back in for care. What are we going to do? And this is where I want you to just quick. Oh, I have so I'm working on the materials for the next seminar. So my binder's in pieces right now. So I'm not going to pull my binder up, but if you can take out your binder and pull out this outline, the reactivating new patient outline, we're going to cover it on the website in a minute, but you can follow along with what I'm talking about. But this will be a bit of a review, right? The new patient comes in for their report of findings. They've been a former patient before. We sit down, and the first thing we want to do is say, and I'll just let me use Dr. Matt. You can be my patient today. So Matt, I just want to review something, because when you came in originally, and this is back when you came in 5 years ago, you had shared with us what your concerns were, and they were low back pain and headaches, and they were affecting you in all these different ways, and it was really not comfortable for you, right? You came to see us then, and I'm going to fast forward on the screen here. What was causing that back then? Now, remember, folks, ladies and gentlemen, remember, this is the first visit, not the one that they just came back for a few days ago or yesterday for their returning patient experience. This is when they first came to see you, all the way back to the very beginning. Now, remember that that scenario when you came in, and you want to refresh their memory so that they really can get a visual. Yeah, that's right. It wasn't good. Now, what was causing that situation to arise? Well, it was this condition called, what's that called? It's called a subluxation, right? We want to use a Socratic style education. So you're going to ask questions, and based on their answers, then you'll proceed with the next step of your process. So we're going to describe the subluxation in a Socratic way. So what was causing those symptoms to appear? Well, we felt that it was likely caused by the subluxation. And the subluxation was this, and I'm going to show and describe the subluxation with a model that really clearly identifies where the the misalignment is, the pinched nerve, the potential disc damage, and I'm going to go through that process. So again, just to frame that, we're relating this back to their very first visit. That's why it says on the screen, first visit. Then, after we've described that, then we're going to review the patient's expectations from back then. So how would I do this? Now, Matt, based on what you came in with originally, and then what was causing that, what were your expectations at that time in terms of how we were going to help you? Now, you're going to get pretty much the same genre of answers in that statement. And the statement is going to be, I was expecting you to help me because I wanted to feel better, right? It was pain relief. How do I know that? The reason why I know that is because that's probably why the patient left. Right? They stopped care because they were feeling better. And you can't blame them for that. That's what mainstream healthcare funnels all of us into thinking, is as long as you don't have symptoms, you must be healthy, right? So their thought was, well, I was hoping to feel better. That's great. Now, we want them to reiterate that, because as we move through this, if they can share that with you, then it gives you a basis for starting the next level of education, which is going to be, there's no problem with what your expectations were back then. However, at that time, we had explained to you that there was a deeper condition involved, that even though you felt better, it probably wasn't going to be fully resolved. Do you remember that? Yes, I do. Okay, then let me take it to the next step. And that's why on the screen, I clicked the button. We're going to compare that to the current primary concerns. So in this case, fast forward to today. What you shared with us, Matt, is that you've now had this upper back pain. Okay, now I'm going to take off my role play hat, and now I'm going to explain to you what's going on behind the scenes or between the lines. The reason why I am asking that question is because I want to clarify what they're concerned about now versus before. Now, most of the time, the patients are going to be talking about the same or similar symptoms as they had before. Now, if we've done our job as chiropractors and we've adjusted their subluxations and the body healed itself, it may be something different. But we want to remind them, because in terms of the chiropractic care that we're providing, we're enhancing their overall health. So everything can respond in a beneficial way. But there's another part, and that is, as Sigmund Freud said, people will do more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure. People will do more to avoid pain or discomfort than they will to gain pleasure. So in the case of what we're about to show them on the results of their examination, if they weren't taking care of their condition properly, chances are we'll be able to show them how things have worsened, separate from the symptoms. Okay, so they may have felt better, they may have had new symptoms come up even in a different place, but we want to tie this back to the condition that without care could potentially be worsening, and we're about to show them if that's the case. So we're going to compare it to their primary concerns currently, right? So their original primary concerns were low back pain and headaches. Current primary concerns are neck pain and shoulder problems, for example, right? So then we're going to explain the state of their subluxations as they are now. So remember, we've got what they had before, which at that time they shared with us. This is what I was concerned about. This is how it was affecting me. We talked about the condition that was causing all of that. We reviewed what their expectations were at that time, which was probably, pain relief or make me feel better. And then we compared it to their current primary concerns. And then we're tying it into the same condition, even though it might be in a different place in their spine, it's the same condition. And as it said on the screen, the current state of their subluxations. What does that mean? That means that the current state is exactly where they are now, which gives us our shoe-in to explain our recommendations as they relate to the status now. Okay, so let's go back to our screen and I'll show you how that works. So they now they understand where they are now, right? And we want to ask a question here. We're going to pause and we're going to ask, if you don't mind me asking, why did you stop your care before? Now, you want to ask that question, even if it's the same obvious answer as they gave you when you asked what their expectations were. If their expectations were to feel better, and then now we're going to ask this question saying, well, why did you stop? And they go, well, duh, doctor, it's because I felt better. That's what I told you. That's what my expectations were. I felt better. And that's okay. We just want them to repeat that because we're going to tie that into the basis of if this condition isn't taken care of, what's going to happen to it? Well, it's going to go downhill, and we don't want that to happen long term, right? So we want to still ask the question, even if it seems a little bit redundant. We want to have them point out to us, why did you stop? Now, it could be a different answer. It could be, well, my insurance maxed out. It could be, I moved away. Now I moved back. And actually, I just had a new patient come back in, Crystal. She was gone for years. She just moved back into the area, and she came back in to see us. That could be their answer, right? So there's a variety of different reasons why someone would discontinue. But why am I pointing this out? The reason why I'm pointing this out is I don't want you to give the same sort of boilerplate recommendations to somebody who stopped for one of those, and that was one of their reasons for stopping. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you haven't seen a patient for 5 years and they're coming back in and you see that their subluxations have clearly worsened. So much so that you feel compelled to give a recommendation that's almost the same as what your original recommendation was. So in other words, they need as much care now as they did back then because their condition has worsened. So if they come in and the reason why they left was because they couldn't afford it, number one, or they couldn't come to that many appointments, and now you give a recommendation with the same number of appointments that they had before, and they're thinking in their mind, doctor, I told you before, I can't come that often. I'm back, but I can't do that. Or they told you before that they couldn't afford it, and now you're laying out the same care plan with the same cost, and they're saying, well, doctor, I told you 5 years ago I couldn't afford that, and I'm still in the same boat. See, people in general don't want to admit that they can't afford something or that they're unable to do something, especially admitting that to someone who's viewed as an authority like a doctor, and somebody who is telling them that their health is going to be jeopardized if they can't. See, that puts somebody in an uncomfortable position. Not that it's completely wrong, but it can make some people feel uncomfortable. So we want to be careful if we're diving into that type of a situation. We want to be real careful about just giving the same recommendation over if that was one of the basis for why they stopped. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, if it's not clear, let me know. I'll be happy to open up your line. We can talk about it. But so we're going to obtain the reason why they discontinued. Then we're going to project to the future. Okay, so how does that work? Well, in this case, Matt, why, if you don't mind, I'd love to know why you stopped before, because I was really looking forward to taking care of you. Well, I stopped because I couldn't afford it. Oh, wow. Well, thanks so much for sharing that with me. I'll tell you what, I'm going to work with you this time. I want to make sure, well, or maybe I would say it in a Socratic way. Here's a Socratic way. If I was to work with you this time in a different way so that it was affordable, then would you want to get the care that you need? And then just stop and let him answer. And of course, Matt says, yeah, I would, of course. Okay. Well, and then here's to the next bullet point, project to the future. Well, Matt, what concerns me, obviously, is what we're seeing happen to you when you weren't getting the care that you need. And the reason why that concerns me is we can see a trajectory of where this is headed if you don't do anything about it. Now, if you let this run its course and you project forward another, say, 5 years, because I haven't seen you for 5 years, how is this going to be for you in 5 years? And look at where you're at now. Look at where you were originally, and you did start to improve, but look at where you are now and continue that same path forward for the same amount of time moving forward. How would that be for you? Now, this is where I need to just pause, right? When I'm talking to a patient, I need to just pause because I just asked a really important question. And the answer to that question must be answered by the patient, not by the doctor, because I'm the one that asked the question. It must be answered by the patient, right? So when I ask that pointed question in a polite and professional way, if there's a pause after that because they're thinking about, well, how is this going to affect me? I need to not butt in and answer my own question. I need to just let that pause be there for as long as it takes for this person to think about the answer and tell me their answer. So if it gets quiet for a second, just wait and be patient. Okay, so that's really important. From there, once we've projected to the future, how will this be for you in 5 years if you don't do anything about it? Then from there, they say, well, it'd be terrible. I'd be really hurting. Now we prompt the demand for care. You see how this follows the same format as the report of findings? It's really, really a lot of fun because you're providing a great education at the same time that you're building value for this person to get the care that they need. So it's a great combination. So how do we prompt the demand for care? Well, Matt, as I said, or as you said, actually, because I asked you, this is really going to be affecting you in another 5 years if you don't do anything about it. So at this point, I just want to ask you, how do you feel about your condition and what do you want to do about it? And then another pause. And Matt says, well, I need to do whatever I can, especially because I feel bad that I wasn't able to get this taken care of a long time ago, and I'm still suffering now because of that. So I'm ready to do whatever you recommend, doctor. Okay, great. That's prompting the demand for care. And the response to that demand for care will be, tell me what you're recommending. That's what we're aiming for when we prompt the demand for care, okay? So Matt says, well, tell me what you recommend. And of course I say, okay, then let me tell you what I recommend, right? This is where we give our new recommendations. And of course, you may want to vary those recommendations on two things that are, well, there's more than two, but the two big ones are, you might change your recommendations because you're acknowledging the progress that they made before and we're not starting from scratch, right? So you might modify your recommendations because of the progress that they made and so the inherent stability that their spine now has for the care that they did receive. That might be one way, or one reason, excuse me. The other reason might be because they told you they couldn't come in as often as you had recommended, or they couldn't afford the cost of the care that you recommended. And so you want to modify that to work with them and make it more of a modified care plan or a lowered cost so they can get the care that at least some care, right? I mean, any chiropractic care is better than no chiropractic care. So we might modify that to work with them, knowing the situation that stopped their care before and making sure that we don't repeat the same problem, okay? And I can give you a quick example just before I move on to the next one, but I had a patient recently who came in. She's a reactivating new patient. Her payments were roughly about $350 a month. She came in for the first month and then she stopped. And when we went through this process, when she returned, she was very clear that the reason why she stopped was because she couldn't afford the payments, the monthly payment. So in preparing these recommendations at her new patient appointment, I prepared kind of an alternate plan, right? She still needed the care that she needed, basically all of it, because she only came in for a month and then she was gone. So I could have recommended the whole care plan all over again. But because I knew what she shared with me at this point, when I said, you had shared with me that you stopped because of cost, I just want you to know I'm happy to work with you. What's something that you do feel would work with your budget? And she told me, and then we reverse engineered the visits to match her budget. So that's why on the screen it says provide new recommendations. Those new recommendations might be modified because you already know what works, what's within that patient's budget or what works with their schedule. So you can modify those accordingly. Based on those recommendations, now we set up the financial arrangements, right? These are new financial arrangements based on new recommendations. It might be because cost was a concern. It might be that there was no cost of a concern. So we have these new recommendations. Sorry, I'll add one more example. Maybe they did make a lot of progress before, and you're just resuming where you left off, right? I've had many patients where we completed their corrective care and they're coming in for supportive maintenance care, say once a week, and they were gone for a year. They came back. Maybe we did twice a week for a few weeks just to sort of get ramped back up to where they were, but then we just continue with once a week. And those are the new recommendations for which then I would assign new financial arrangements. And I actually had another patient come in recently that was in that scenario where even in the time that he was gone, because he came in for years, and in the time that he was gone, our fees had gone up. So the new financial arrangements would have been quite a bit more costly. But he was already telling me that the reason why he had stopped was because of cost, even though he had come in for years. So I knew, and he's a great patient. His name's Jeff, and I've taken care of him and his family. So I knew that I was going to work with him and even slide my fees a bit just to give him more bang for his buck, so that we could take care of him again. So I already knew what his budget was. We just jumped right back in, continued his care plan with the new payment amount, which fit his budget, and we're smooth sailing, and he's back in town. So we're going to take care of him again. So those are just some examples that will help you to kind of set this up in advance and know going into it that you're going to have new recommendations, you're going to have new financial arrangements, and then we want to get another clear 100. Okay. How does that work? Matt, just, based on these recommendations and based on the cost, I just want to ask you, based on your commitment to follow through with this, where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself at 100% committed, 70%, 20%? What would you say? And then, of course, Matt's going to answer that. He's like, well, I'm back in town now. I'm 100%. I'm ready to go. Okay, great. Just want to make sure, because I'm 100% too, but I want to make sure we're on the same page. Or Matt might say, well, I'm at 70% because, like before, my income varies and I'm just not sure if I'll be able to afford this long term. I'm happy to be back, ready to get adjusted, but long term, what happens if I need to stop again? Right? That's a real common question that you'll get. And of course, you can answer that however you'd like to answer it. My answer would be, I'm always here to take care of you. If you need to stop again, just let me know. Then if you have to stop, we'll be here to take care of you again when you come back. But better yet, if you do feel like you're stopping because of cost or because of schedule, let me know ahead of time that next time. You don't have to actually stop coming in altogether. Maybe we just tone it down. So you're coming in less often. It's costing you less. We make it affordable. Maybe it's temporary. Maybe it's long-term. Let me know ahead of time. We'll be happy to work with you. And that way that's on the table. And then since they know that's on the table, they'll let you know ahead of time next time, and they won't actually stop. You might just do a modified care plan, which we will be covering in the next seminar. In the financial arrangements, we're going to cover modified care plans in great detail. So you'll have all that information. Okay, so continuing on, deliver a specific adjustment, right? A specific scientific chiropractic adjustment to correct the subluxation and release the innate intelligence in their body so that they can reach and achieve maximum health potential and maximum quality of life. I love saying that because it's just amazing, right? It's amazing what chiropractic care can do for enhancing someone's health potential. So once we've done that, we bring the patient up to the front desk, and then in closing, I'll just say, as it says on the screen, several attempts may be needed for a patient to adopt chiropractic care or philosophy into their lifestyle. So what does that mean? Of course, we have patients, we call them echo patients, meaning they left and they came back, and then they left and then they came back. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, obviously it's not what we would call ideal, but we want to be here to take care of our patients. And sometimes you'll have patients that leave because of cost. They come back, they're fully committed, and then 3 months later, cost is a concern again, and then they leave. And we want to have our doors set up and our systems set up in our office to where it helps those patients into the office for care. And when they leave, it's not a big hassle for them to come back. That's really important because you want people to feel comfortable coming back. And let me just carry that forward into a real example that happens all the time in our towns, our communities. And that is, your patients are talking to other people, right? And if you burn that bridge when they leave and make it difficult for them to come back in, maybe they left because of cost, but they didn't know there's another option, or they left because the schedule was so busy. then when their friend at the grocery store says, hey, I need a chiropractor, they're going to say, oh, you should go see my chiropractor. They're great. But just know they're going to ask you to come in a bunch of times, or they're going to tell you how much it costs. And for me, it was way too expensive. You throw that into a little casual conversation at the grocery store, and that potential new patient's going to think twice about coming to see you in the first place, and the former patient's going to think twice about coming back to see you as a returning patient. So we want to always make sure we leave those doors open for our patients to feel comfortable coming back in and leaving. And eventually, that's why on the screen, that's why it says this. So I'm going to put this back up, because it says sometimes you need several attempts, right? Sometimes multiple times you're going to be explaining this process or going through this process with your patient, and they're going to start care, and then they're going to take off, and then they'll come back. And that's okay, because any chiropractic care is better than no chiropractic care. All right. So now let's actually, I think that's going to wrap up for today. Next week, I'm going to be getting into your schedule, and we're going to do an overview of the module, because we still have one more week before our next module starts. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up today. Next week, I'll go into basically bringing the whole report of findings module to a close, and then we'll jump into module 4. For everybody, just know that if there's, and I should share my screen again, I just want to show you, because if you ever have a question or need help in any area of your practice with, for relating to DC trainings, if you just go into the Contact Us page and you click on coaching calls and you click on training questions, you can schedule a call with me at any time. I'm happy to help you, to dive into some things that maybe aren't appropriate or not a good fit for the webinar, because they're more personal to your situation. So you can always just schedule a coaching call on the website, and I'll be happy to meet with you one-on-one and get that addressed. So that's another great feature of DC trainings. So I'm going to wrap up today. That was a great topic. Next week, we'll finish up module 3. Please RSVP. Oh, I do need to show you that. Sorry. I want to just show you. So RSVP for the seminar. There's some of you I think are coming. I'm not sure, but I think you are. But I haven't seen you actually RSVP for the seminar. So if you click on training and you click on RSVP and you let us know that you're going to be coming, for example, here, if I want Kiara to come, all I do is click register, click her name, click save, and now her name is in gold. That means she's coming to the seminar. Okay. If I want to cancel someone, then I would just click, because Kiara is not coming to the seminar actually, or actually she might be, I'm not sure, but I would just click on her name again. I'd click not attending and then click save. And now her name's in red, and that's highlighted up here. So please RSVP, let us know you're coming. Love to see you here. And in the meantime, let us know if you have any questions, and that way we can get those answered as well. So had a great call with you today. Thank you so much, and happy Independence Day. This week, we had our 4th of July celebration. I was celebrating independence from pharmaceutical products. It's been literally 33 years since I've taken so much as an aspirin as far as pharmaceutical products go. So I was celebrating a long span of time with just natural health from above down, inside out through chiropractic care. And I'm sure all of you are also celebrating that as well. So thanks again, and I will talk to you next week.
If you would like to become a member of DC Trainings, be sure to head on over to dctrainings.com to get started today.